After saving every penny for 8 years, we finally closed on our dream home. As we were moving in, our neighbor came over, smiled politely, and said, "You won't last a year here." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. 2 weeks later, we started receiving anonymous complaints about unlicensed construction, loud parties, and dangerous pets, even though we had none. One afternoon, I caught him standing in our driveway, snapping photos of my kids through the windows. When I demanded, "What are you doing?" he just grinned and said, "Building my case. You'll be gone by winter." I never thought my dream would turn into a nightmare. But that's exactly what happened when my family bought what was supposed to be our forever home. My name's Rick. I'm 41. Married to Hannah, 38, and we have 2 kids, Eli, who just turned 9, and Grace, 7. I work HVAC all over Indiana, and my wife's a nurse. We've spent almost a decade scraping and saving. No vacations. No new cars. We skipped everything to give our kids something better. A real home. Stability. Peace. We closed on the house in Westfield, Indiana last July. It wasn't a mansion, but to us, it was perfect. 4 bedrooms. Room for the kids to grow. A backyard with trees. A real neighborhood with block parties and kids riding bikes. It took 8 years. The day we moved in, the sun was shining. Hannah cried happy tears when we pulled into the driveway. Eli and Grace were already running through the empty house, picking out bedrooms. I thought we'd finally made it. I was dead wrong. While we unloaded the U-Haul, a man approached us. Mid-50s. Close-cropped gray hair. Tan polo shirt tucked into iron khakis. "Afternoon," he said. "You must be the new family." "Yep. Rick and Hannah," I said. "And those 2 speed demons are Eli and Grace." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm Mark. I live 2 doors down." We exchanged a few pleasantries. He seemed normal at first. Quiet. Polite. Then, as he turned to leave, he looked over his shoulder and said, "You won't last a year here." I let out a nervous laugh. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mark just smiled and walked off. At first, I brushed it off. Probably just an old guy who didn't like new neighbors. There's always one in every neighborhood, right? But 2 weeks in, we got a letter from the city. "Unlicensed construction reported at your property." That made no sense. We hadn't even painted yet. The next week? Another letter. Noise complaints about loud parties. We didn't even own a stereo. Then came the third, dangerous pets. The only animals in our house were my daughter's goldfish and the occasional backyard squirrel. At first, we thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone mixed up addresses. But soon, I noticed Mark walking his dog past our house. Again. And again. 5-6 times a day. He'd slow down. Stop. Stare. I started getting a sick feeling every time I saw him. Then came the day I caught him. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I came home early from a job, client canceled at the last minute. As I pulled up, I saw Mark in my driveway. Camera in hand. Pointed right at our living room window where Grace and Eli were coloring at the coffee table. I slammed on the brakes. Jumped out of the truck. "What the hell are you doing?" He didn't even flinch. Lowered the camera and smiled. "Building my case. You'll be gone by winter." That was the moment I realized we were in serious trouble. This wasn't random. This was personal. We called the police. Filed a report. They came by, took notes, but ultimately shrugged. He's technically standing on a public sidewalk. Taking photos of what's visible from the outside isn't illegal. Next, we tried code enforcement. They said the complaints didn't hold up under inspection but couldn't stop more from being filed. We were being buried in false reports. Hannah couldn't sleep. She started keeping the kids away from the front windows. Every time I saw Mark stroll by, my blood boiled. We sent him a cease and desist letter through our lawyer. He walked it back up to our porch, smiled, and dropped it at my feet. "I told you," he said. "You won't last a year." That night, after we got the kids to bed, Hannah and I sat at the kitchen table. "I can't live like this," she said, eyes red. "The kids are scared." "I'm scared." I nodded. I was scared too. But I was also furious. And I'm not the kind of man who folds. "He wants us to run," I said. "That's how he wins. But not this time." So I made a plan. I work in HVAC, but I've picked up more than a few security system installs over the years. First, I installed 4 security cameras, one on each side of the house. Visible. Bright LED floodlights triggered by motion. Then I installed 2 more hidden cameras, disguised as porch lights. The next day, I bought a trail camera from a hunting supply store and mounted it in a tree facing the sidewalk where Mark always loitered. I set up a motion detection app that would alert me any time someone entered our property line. While the cameras kept watch, I started digging into Mark's background. Public records. Court filings. Property records. And then, jackpot. 10 years ago, the family who owned our house before us had filed a civil harassment lawsuit against Mark, alleging stalking, false complaints, trespassing. I tracked them down. They now lived in Fort Wayne. I called and introduced myself. The husband, Kyle, was quiet at first. Then he sighed. "Let me guess. You're having problems with Mark Childress." They told me everything. "He did this exact same thing to us," Kyle said. "Tried to drive us out. Reported us for everything under the sun. He even called my boss and told him I was running an illegal daycare from my garage. Got me fired." My stomach dropped. "This is what he does," Kyle continued. "Finds a family, harasses them until they leave, then picks the next target. I upgraded our cameras to cloud storage. No way he could wipe evidence. I gathered affidavits from the previous homeowners. But I needed more. I reached out to some clients, cops, lawyers, even a private investigator I'd done ductwork for last year. I hired the PI to tail Mark and dig up anything he could." 2 weeks later, the PI came back with a thick folder. Not only had Mark harassed us and the previous owners, he was running a fake HOA scam. He'd convinced half the street that he was the head of an informal neighborhood association. Charged maintenance fees. Threatened to report people who didn't pay. He'd collected over $50,000 in 5 years. No one fought him. People were scared. But I wasn't. I was patient. Kept my cameras rolling. Kept my head down. Let Mark think he was winning. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Mark. Sneaking into our backyard. Flashlight in hand. Trying to look through the basement window. This time, I didn't confront him. I just recorded everything. Every single second. I didn't sleep much that night. The footage of Mark creeping around my backyard played over and over in my head. My wife was curled up next to me, but she wasn't asleep either. Every sound outside made her jump. "I can't take much more of this," she whispered. "We're almost there," I told her. "Just a little longer." I meant it. The trap was set. I just needed him to keep digging his own grave. The next morning, I printed stills from the video. Mark's face. His flashlight. His hand on the window glass. I walked door to door on our street. Most people were hesitant to open the door at first. But once I explained, the floodgates opened. 3 families admitted they'd been paying Mark's HOA fees because they were afraid of him. One elderly couple had forked over almost $4,000 over 3 years. They thought it was legal. A young couple 2 houses down had tried to resist him. They'd been hit with noise complaints, a city citation about illegal fencing, and a CPS visit claiming child neglect. Just like what happened to us. "This guy's a predator," the husband told me, shaking. "But if we fight him, he'll just double down." I nodded. Not if we fight him together. By that afternoon, 5 families had agreed to give statements to my PI and to the police. But I wasn't done yet. When Mark saw me walking around the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, something changed. He stopped trying to hide his hostility. One morning, I came out to find my truck windshield shattered. The cops took a report but said there wasn't enough evidence to prove it was Mark. Then our mailbox was smashed. Security lights were spray painted. Finally, a dead rat showed up on our front porch. That was the last straw for Hannah. We need to leave, she said, tears in her eyes. Rick, we have kids. What if he hurts them next? I held her hand. If we leave, he wins. And he'll just do this to someone else. I promised her, I will stop him. For good. 2 days later, my PI brought me more good news. Mark wasn't just extorting the neighborhood. He was also using his fake HOA paperwork to take out a second mortgage on his own home. Using association dues as proof of income. Fraud. Bank fraud. And if the police didn't want to act fast enough, I knew the banks and the state attorney's office would. But there was one more thing. The PI had discovered Mark was on probation. A case from 3 years ago. Misdemeanor assault in a different county. If he was caught trespassing or harassing again, he could face real jail time. That's when I decided it was time to squeeze the trigger. I reached out to a local news anchor, Lisa Romero. She'd done exposés on HOA scams before. I handed over everything, the video footage, the PI's reports, the affidavits from neighbors. She was shocked. This could be one of the biggest scams in Hamilton County history. She arranged for an interview. That Friday, a news van parked in front of my house. Lisa and her camera crew set up. Mark came out of his house, storming down the sidewalk. What the hell is this? He barked. Lisa kept the camera rolling. I'm Lisa Romero with Channel 4. We're doing a story on alleged HOA fraud and neighborhood harassment. Mark's face went red. These people are criminals. They're the ones. He never finished. 2 police cruisers rolled up behind him. Just as the officers stepped out, Mark's wife, whom we'd never really seen before, came running out of their house. She was carrying a stack of papers. I have something to say, she cried. The cops paused. The cameras turned toward her. I'm done protecting him, she said, voice shaking. My husband has been running scams like this for 20 years. Not just here. 3 other neighborhoods before we moved to Westfield. She handed the papers to the police. Detailed records. Bank statements. Even audio recordings of Mark bragging about blackmailing neighbors. Everyone stood frozen. Mark's face collapsed. You stupid, don't, his wife warned, stepping back. I've already spoken to an attorney. I couldn't believe it. His own wife had flipped on him. Mark froze. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, maybe scream, maybe beg, but nothing came out. The officers moved fast. One took the papers from his wife. The other cuffed Mark's hands behind his back. Mark Childress, you're under arrest for harassment, stalking, fraud, and probation violations. His face twisted in shock. You can't do this. I built this neighborhood. The officer just tightened the cuffs. No, sir. You tried to destroy it. The news camera caught every second. Neighbors started coming out of their homes. First a few. Then a dozen. People who had been scared silent for years. Now they stood together, watching as Mark, who once controlled them, was shoved into the back of a squad car. Mark's wife handed over everything. Bank records showing years of fake dues and fees, funneled into private accounts. Emails to city inspectors he'd impersonated. Even a spreadsheet listing the targets he planned to go after next, including a young couple who had just put an offer on the house across the street. He'd already drafted fake violation notices for them. It was all there. When the detectives arrived to search Mark's house, they found more, a burner phone with text messages to anonymous tip lines making false complaints, a drawer full of fake violation notices with neighbors' names, photos of almost every house on the block, including our kids' rooms, which made my stomach churn with rage. Within a month, Mark was indicted on multiple felony counts: fraud, stalking, harassment, probation violations, and criminal trespassing. His fake HOA scheme made the front page of the Indianapolis Star. Turns out he had done similar scams in at least 2 other Indiana towns. Those towns were now opening cases against him too. He tried to cut a plea deal. Prosecutors offered 5 years in prison and restitution to all the families he'd defrauded. Mark refused. He thought he could beat the charges. Big mistake. The trial started 6 months later. I testified. So did my wife, my neighbors, and even the previous homeowners from Fort Wayne. But the moment that sealed his fate? His own wife took the stand. Calm. Clear. Devastating. She detailed how he ran the scams, bullied families, and threatened anyone who resisted. She'd stayed silent out of fear and because Mark controlled the money. But after seeing him target our kids, she couldn't stay quiet anymore. When the jury returned the verdict, guilty on all counts, Mark didn't even flinch. Just sat there, staring at the floor like he'd already accepted his fate. The judge sentenced him to 17 years in state prison. Mark's house went into foreclosure. The bank seized it. At the next neighborhood meeting, our real neighborhood association, we voted to demolish the old eyesore. The empty lot was turned into a community garden. Neighbors who once kept their heads down now worked side by side planting flowers and vegetables. The fear was gone. Mark was gone. And for the first time in nearly a year, my kids played in the yard without looking over their shoulders. I won't lie, what we went through left scars. My wife and I both started therapy. We had to explain to our kids why some adults hurt others. And I made mistakes too. For weeks, I'd obsessed over revenge. I wanted Mark crushed, humiliated, ruined. And while justice was served, I can't say it didn't change me. I'm not as trusting as I used to be. But I also learned something important. When bullies push, you can push back. Harder. Smarter. Together. Because predators only win when good people stay silent. And we didn't. Not this time.